In this video, I want to talk about things that I don't miss about being a Christian when I used to be a Christian. I grew up, for those of you who don't know, a very devout evangelical Christian, mostly Pentecostal beliefs. And I've spoken before on this channel about things that I miss about being a Christian, things that I miss about being in the faith, things I used to believe. And so in this video, I want to talk about things that I don't miss. Yeah, so the first thing I would say is, back when I was a Christian, I really wanted to sin, but I couldn't because I was religious. So I'm happy I'm not a Christian now because I can sin and I can sin all day, and it's great because I just get to sin all the time. And that's really why I don't miss being religious and a Christian, because when I was a Christian, I couldn't sin. No, okay, so that's actually not the reason whatsoever, but I know some people think that. One of the things that stands out the most to me is the way I used to look at other people. So from my point of view, nothing else in the whole world mattered except being saved. If you weren't saved, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If any of you are ashamed of me and my words when the Son of Man comes, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him in his Father's glory. Whatever. It's, in the Gospels, it's what Jesus says. So the most important thing to me was, is someone saved? And I always used to look at everyone else as like a lost soul. They're a lost soul and they need salvation, and this is the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter how kind a person is, how successful a person is, how good a person is to others, what values someone has, how someone treats people. None of that matters. All that matters is if you're saved or not. Because if you're not saved, then nothing matters, because you're going to go burn in hell, and who cares about anything? And if you're saved, then that's all that matters. Now, obviously, okay, I would have said, if you're saved, hopefully you're still a good person, you still help other people, and you do good things, and you are trying to build the kingdom of God, and you're trying to establish, the message of Jesus and spread the gospel and things like this, and you're shining a light. But ultimately, all that matters is you're saved. So when I met other people, and when I interacted with other people, and when I had coworkers and things, when I started working at a secular job, like for the first time, that was like the only thing that I cared about. I didn't care about getting to know this person as a person, and like getting to see things from their perspective, and getting to taking an interest in their likes and hobbies. And I mean, the only reason that I did do those things, but it was with the secret intention of, I want to get to know you so I can find out the best way to win you to my Christianity, because that's the only thing that matters. And anytime that someone said they were a Christian, it usually was almost more of like a red flag for me, because I would look at the way they live, and they say cuss words. They smoke. Well, they're obviously a phony baloney Christian. They're not a real Christian. So now they're putting a bad name on Christianity because they're pretending to be a Christian and they're not actually a Christian. So that's actually worse. So now I dislike you more. And it was this whole thing of this elitism view that I would never have said, I'm better than other people and I'm more righteous and this and that. But inwardly, I had this feeling that, well, I'm not a sinner because I'm been made the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus, and I'm saved and all this stuff, and that's fantastic. So good thing I'm not like them. Almost like the tax collector in the Gospels. He says, thank God I'm not a sinner like this guy. And I never would have, put it that way, and I'm sure if you'd asked me then, I would not have agreed with that. But I was just like, when I worked at a coffee shop when I got back from Bible college, I remember thinking, like, all my peers were doing fun stuff. They're out partying and doing this and going to concerts and all this stuff. And I worked and read books and went to the gym. It was like my whole life. And I remember thinking, like, man, I just have like no fun in life. But I was like, at least I'm not a sinner. At least I'm righteous. At least I'm living for God, And now I just can look at the world in a totally different way and see things for what it is. I'm not better than anyone else. We're all humans. We all are just evolved from the same common ancestor from over millions of years. And we're all here, we're all just trying to maximize pleasure and minimize suffering. We're not that different. Now, some people obviously different ways of going about that, but that's neither here nor there. When I met people that had a different perspective or a different way of living than I thought was morally correct, simply because it says so in a book and I was taught to believe that, like, for example, LGBTQ people, that was a big one. So anyone that was any flavor of that community, well, as soon as I found that out, is like, now there was some like almost sadness about it. Like, oh, that's sad that this person is fallen for that terrible sinful lifestyle or that sinful belief or perspective, and how terrible for them, and that they are living this way or that way, or they identify this way or that way, and they want to go by a different name and use pronouns that weren't assigned to them at birth, and how awful, and it's just tragic, and I feel bad for this person, and good thing I'm not sinful like that, yeah. And that's just not, like, I couldn't be like close friends with someone like that. I couldn't really respect them, and I wasn't the type to be like, I wouldn't go up to their face and be like, you're a dirty rotten sinner. No, I wouldn't do that, but inwardly, like, it was a subtle, like, inward judgmentalism that was just always there. And now, having been now living in a secular way and not being religious for the past 5 years, it is so much better. When I remember I was at work years ago and one of my coworkers told me, he was gay. It came up somewhere, whatever. I just remembered it was so nice to do, like, just not care. Like, oh yeah, cool, good for you. Back then, I would have been like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have even said anything, but now I've been like, oh, this guy's gay, like, this is so tragic, he's living this terrible, sinful lifestyle, oh my gosh. Same with other things, like, now I don't have to care. It used to be like, I'd see someone that, some people you can't tell just by looking at them what sex they were assigned at birth. And you'd be like, oh, is that person this or that, or someone has a name that doesn't seem to match what sex they appear to be stereotypically, or someone uses pronouns that doesn't seem to match like what sex you think they appear to be. And back then, I'd be like, oh, this person's probably trans, oh my goodness, blah, 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 blah. And it would have been this whole thing. I wouldn't have came out and like said it again. I wouldn't have like pointed my finger and been like, you suck and you're a dirty sinner and that's disgusting. No, I wouldn't have done that. But inwardly, there would have been that inward judgmentalism. Like, and now I just get to not care because it's not a big deal. And just because a book written thousands of years ago says, actually, well, yeah, that's debatable. Well, it doesn't really come out and say you can't be transgender except a very obscure law in the Old Testament that says men should not wear female garments or something, but that's totally relativistic. And also, we don't go by the law of Moses, or some Christians would say that anyway, because you don't stone people for picking up sticks on Saturday. So anyway, I digress. But now I can just not care because it actually doesn't matter, because what you identify with and how you express your gender, it doesn't affect me, and I honestly don't care. And I realized before, I'm like, wow, why did I ever care about this? Same thing with using profanity. I used to always get so mad at people using profanity. Why are they talking like that? And all this bothers me. Well, now it doesn't bother me. And I don't know why it ever did, because it's colloquial usage, and that's how people talk. That's how we communicate in a society. So there's all these things that used to be so offensive. Oh, this is offensive, and that's offensive, and I'm offended. And now I get to just not be offended because I realized I only believed these things were wrong because my religion and what I thought God was telling me to believe was wrong. And in fact, there's no reason to think it's actually wrong when you base your moral system on something that's not based on an ancient book written thousands of years ago. And that's not to say that everything in the Bible is wrong or incorrect or bad. You can have the good parts without taking all the baggage with it. So now, not being a Christian, I don't have to come against all these things in other people that they do this way or that way that I used to believe was sinful because a book told me to. I can be less judgmental. I can be more accepting. I can be a lot less offended by things that used to be offensive when they didn't need to be. And I just can't imagine going back to being that person that, even though I wouldn't say it out loud or wouldn't have to, secretly looks down on all these people and all these things for actions and beliefs that I had no justifiable reason to condemn. And I will say that is one thing that I think leaving religion set me free from, and I think it's something great. But obviously, the former me would have disagreed with 100% and said this is a terrible thing because these things are bad. But that's just because God said so. And I have the correct interpretation of God because I do.